You might have an empty wallet, bills piling up, and people around you doubting your worth. But let me tell you this, being broke is temporary, and having nothing does not make you poor. The only thing that can keep you trapped in poverty is believing you are powerless. Today, I'm going to show you why your mindset is your true wealth and how to claim it even when your bank account says otherwise. Lacking money is a real struggle, and there is no need to deny that reality. Bills still arrive, responsibilities still exist, and pressure can feel relentless. But the most dangerous part of financial hardship is not the empty bank account. It is the story you start telling yourself about what that emptiness means. The moment a person begins to believe they are poor, something far deeper than finances is affected. That belief quietly shapes identity, behavior, confidence, and expectations. And once it settles into the mind, it can outlast the hardship itself. In the United States, money is often treated as a measure of value. From a young age, people absorb the idea that success equals income, that worth is proven by lifestyle, and that struggle is something to hide. Over time, this creates a subtle but powerful equation. Less money equals less worth. When someone internalizes that equation, they don't just experience financial difficulty, they begin to experience a shrinking sense of self. They stop seeing themselves as capable, influential, or deserving of more. This is how a temporary financial condition transforms into a permanent mental identity. Being broke simply means resources are limited right now. Being poor in mindset means believing that limitation is who you are. That belief changes how people think, speak, and act. They start making decisions based on fear instead of possibility. They avoid opportunities because they assume rejection is inevitable. They hesitate to dream big because dreaming feels irresponsible when money is tight. Over time, the mind adapts to survival mode, and survival becomes the ceiling. In America, this mindset is especially costly because the culture, despite its flaws, still rewards initiative, confidence, and adaptability. Opportunities often go to those who believe they belong in the room before they actually do. Employers, investors, collaborators, and mentors respond not just to skills, but to self-perception. When someone sees themselves as poor, it shows up in posture, tone, and presence. It becomes an unspoken signal that says, I don't expect much, and the world tends to agree with the expectations you set for yourself. History repeatedly proves that money does not create confidence, confidence attracts money. Many of the most successful figures in American business, technology, and culture experienced periods of extreme financial struggle. What separated them from those who stayed stuck was not luck or privilege alone, but refusal. They refused to internalize scarcity as identity. They saw their lack of money as a phase, not a definition. They understood, consciously or not, that identity always moves first and circumstances follow. When someone believes they are poor, they unconsciously protect that belief. They avoid risks that could contradict it. They downplay their abilities. They talk themselves out of growth with phrases like, people like me don't get ahead, or that's not realistic for someone in my situation. This thinking feels logical, even responsible, but it quietly enforces the very limitations they want to escape. The mind seeks consistency, and once it accepts a low self-image, it resists evidence that challenges it. On the other hand, when someone acknowledges struggle without adopting the identity of poverty, their behavior shifts. They still recognize reality, but they don't surrender to it. They say, this is difficult, but it's temporary, or I'm under resourced right now, not incapable. That difference may sound small, but it changes everything. It keeps ambition alive. It preserves dignity. It allows a person to plan, learn, and act from a place of self-respect instead of shame. The American mindset at its best has always been rooted in reinvention. People move across states, switch careers, rebuild after failure, and start over later in life than they ever expected. But reinvention requires belief before results. No one reinvents themselves while convinced they are fundamentally limited. A poverty mindset convinces people that effort won't matter, that systems are stacked permanently against them, and that improvement is for others, not for them. While structural challenges are real, surrendering internally guarantees defeat regardless of external conditions. Another danger of seeing oneself as poor is how it distorts time. Short-term relief starts to matter more than long-term growth. People choose comfort over progress, familiarity over challenge. They may cling to habits, jobs, or environments that feel safe but offer no future. Not because they lack intelligence or ambition, but because the mindset of poverty trains the brain to prioritize immediate survival over strategic growth. Vision narrows, patience weakens, hope feels risky. Yet, even without money, a person in America still possesses powerful assets, the ability to learn new skills, access to information, the freedom to move, and the chance to connect with others. These assets mean little if the mind is closed, but they become transformative when paired with belief. The refusal to see oneself as poor keeps these possibilities visible. It keeps curiosity alive. It keeps effort meaningful. This is not about pretending struggle doesn't exist or adopting unrealistic positivity. It is about accuracy. Saying, I am poor, is not accurate. It confuses a condition with an identity. Conditions change. Identities persist. When people protect their identity during hard times, they give themselves room to grow when conditions improve. When they damage their identity, even improved circumstances may not feel enough. In American culture, where comparison is constant and pressure to appear successful is intense, it takes strength to separate self-worth from financial status. But that separation is essential. Without it, money becomes the ruler of confidence, peace, and decision-making. With it, money becomes a tool important but not defining. Believing you are not poor, even when you have nothing, is an act of self-respect. It says, I am more than my current numbers. It keeps the future open. It prevents temporary hardship from becoming permanent limitation. And for those willing to hold that belief through uncertainty, it often becomes the foundation for real change. Money can disappear quickly. Mindset lasts longer. And in a country where opportunity often responds first to belief, protecting your self-image may be the most practical decision you can make. Being broke is a situation, not a sentence. It is something that happens to people, not something people are. Yet many individuals unconsciously turn a temporary financial state into a lifelong label. The moment someone stops saying, I'm broke right now, and starts saying, I'm poor, a powerful shift occurs, not in their bank account, but in their mind. That shift quietly shapes how they see the world, how they treat themselves, and what they believe is possible. In the United States, where movement, reinvention, and upward change are deeply woven into the culture, this distinction matters more than most people realize. Being broke simply means the numbers don't work at the moment. Seeing yourself as poor means believing those numbers represent your ceiling. One describes a moment in time. The other describes an identity. And identities tend to dictate behavior far more than circumstances ever do. When someone believes being broke defines them, they begin to act accordingly. They hesitate to apply for opportunities because they assume they won't be chosen. They don't negotiate pay because they feel lucky just to be there. They avoid new environments because they feel they don't belong. None of this happens consciously. It happens quietly through lowered expectations and self-protective thinking. Over time, these small decisions add up, and the situation that was once temporary starts to feel permanent. America rewards people who act like they are on their way somewhere, even before they arrive. Confidence often opens doors before credentials do. Yet a poverty identity trains people to wait until they have more money, more security, more certainty, before they allow themselves to think bigger. That waiting becomes a trap, because clarity often comes after action, not before it. Being broke can happen to anyone. Layoffs, medical bills, family responsibilities, economic downturns, these realities touch people across every background. But choosing to see yourself as poor is not imposed by those events. It is learned. It comes from repeated disappointment, from comparison, from being told directly or indirectly that certain lives are not for people like you. Over time, that message can become internalized, and once it lives inside the mind, it starts speaking on your behalf. This is where choice enters the picture. Not the shallow idea of positive thinking, but the deeper choice of self definition. You can acknowledge struggle without surrendering your identity. You can say, I'm in a tight season, without saying, this is all I'll ever be. That distinction preserves ambition. It keeps the future psychologically accessible. It allows effort to feel meaningful instead of pointless. In American society, many opportunities are not evenly distributed, and pretending otherwise is unrealistic. But history consistently shows that people who rise from difficult circumstances almost always share one trait. They refuse to let their situation name them. They did not deny reality, but they refused to let reality become prophecy. They acted as if their current position was incomplete, not final. Seeing yourself as poor also changes how you relate to time. Short-term relief becomes more important than long-term growth. You may choose immediate comfort over delayed progress, not because you are lazy, but because scarcity narrows vision. The brain under pressure seeks safety, not expansion. When being broke is seen as a phase, the mind can tolerate discomfort in service of growth. When it is seen as identity, discomfort feels pointless, even cruel. Another cost of adopting a poverty identity is how it affects learning. People stop investing in themselves, not only financially, but mentally and emotionally. They assume education, skill building, and personal development are luxuries reserved for those already ahead. Yet in the US, skills and adaptability are among the fastest ways out of difficult situations. A mindset that says, this isn't for me, blocks access to tools that could change everything. Choosing not to see yourself as poor does not mean ignoring structural challenges or pretending effort guarantees success. It means protecting the one thing that must remain intact for any progress to occur: belief in your own potential. Without that belief, even opportunity feels threatening. With it, setbacks become information rather than confirmation of failure. When someone shifts from I am poor to I am rebuilding, their behavior changes. They speak differently. They plan differently. They begin to look for leverage instead of relief. They take small risks instead of none. These changes may not produce immediate financial results, but they compound over time. Momentum builds quietly, often long before money shows up. In the American context, where second chances are common but self-doubt is widespread, this internal choice is decisive. Systems can be imperfect, competition can be fierce, and outcomes can be uncertain, but a person who does not surrender their self-image remains dangerous to limitation. They keep moving, they keep learning, they keep positioning themselves for the moment opportunity meets preparation. Being broke is something you experience. Seeing yourself as poor is something you accept. One can change without permission, the other requires resistance. And for those willing to resist that label, to say, this is not who I am, this is where I am, the future remains open. That choice may not change your finances overnight, but it changes the direction you're facing. And in a country where direction often matters more than starting point, that shift can make all the difference. America has always been less about where you start and more about how you move. That idea is deeply woven into the country's culture, history, and psychology. While the system is imperfect and opportunity is not evenly distributed, one truth consistently shows up: belief, initiative, and the willingness to reinvent yourself often matter more than your current position. This is why mindset plays such a critical role in whether someone rises or remains stuck, especially during periods of struggle. In the United States, there is an unspoken expectation that individuals advocate for themselves. People who move forward are often the ones who raise their hand, speak up, apply anyway, and take action before they feel ready. This does not mean confidence guarantees success, but it often earns access. Doors tend to open for those who act like they belong in the room, even when they are still figuring things out. Belief becomes a signal, one that others respond to consciously or unconsciously. Reinvention is not just accepted in American culture, it is often celebrated. People change careers in their 30s, 40s, and beyond. They relocate across states to start over. They fail publicly and try again. In many other parts of the world, identity is fixed early. In the US, identity is often fluid. But that fluidity requires internal permission. No one reinvents themselves while convinced they are defined by their past or their current struggle. This is why seeing yourself as poor, rather than temporarily under resourced, can quietly block the very culture that could support your growth. A poverty mindset tells you reinvention is unrealistic. It whispers that change is for other people, people with connections, money, or advantages you don't have. Over time, that belief becomes self-enforcing. You stop exploring options, stop imagining alternatives, and stop responding to possibility when it appears. America tends to reward those who take initiative before conditions are perfect. Many opportunities exist in imperfect spaces: startups, growing companies, side projects, skill-based work, and self-directed paths. These environments often value effort, adaptability, and learning speed more than pedigree. But initiative requires belief. No one steps forward if they are convinced stepping forward will only expose inadequacy. Belief in this context does not mean arrogance or denial of difficulty. It means believing that effort is worth something, that learning compounds, and that today's version of you is not the final one. This belief allows people to tolerate uncertainty. It helps them take calculated risks. It keeps them moving when outcomes are not guaranteed. In a culture where momentum often matters more than perfection, this mindset becomes a real advantage. The American workplace and marketplace frequently reward those who solve problems rather than wait for instructions. People who say, I'll figure it out, are often given more responsibility, more trust, and eventually more opportunity. But a poverty identity discourages problem solving at higher levels. It keeps people focused on avoiding mistakes rather than creating value. Fear replaces curiosity, and caution replaces initiative. Reinvention also requires letting go of shame, something the poverty mindset feeds on. When people feel ashamed of where they are, they hide. They downplay their ambitions. They avoid environments where they might be seen as beginners. But reinvention requires visibility. It requires being willing to be new, awkward, and imperfect in public. In the US, those who succeed often do so not because they avoided embarrassment, but because they endured it. Another reality of American culture is that networks matter. Connections are often built through proximity, conversation, and participation. People who see themselves as poor may unconsciously withdraw from spaces where connections form. They assume they don't belong or that they have nothing to offer. But belief changes this dynamic. When someone believes they are in transition rather than deficiency, they show up differently. They ask questions, they contribute ideas, they become visible, and visibility often precedes opportunity. Initiative also shows up in how people invest their time. Those who believe in their capacity to grow are more likely to learn new skills, adapt to market changes, and reposition themselves when industries shift. In the US, where technology and work are constantly evolving, this adaptability is crucial. A fixed identity tied to struggle makes learning feel pointless. A growth oriented identity makes learning feel strategic. Reinvention is rarely a single dramatic moment. It is usually a series of small decisions made consistently over time, applying for something slightly out of reach, learning a skill before it pays off, saying yes to an uncomfortable opportunity. These actions require a belief that the future is negotiable. Without that belief, people wait for permission that never comes. America's mythology is filled with stories of people who reinvented themselves not because conditions were ideal, but because they refused to accept limitation as final. While these stories are often simplified, they reveal something important: identity precedes outcome. People who rise tend to act as if their story is still being written, even when evidence suggests otherwise. A poverty mindset, by contrast, treats the present as proof of the future. It assumes that what is happening now is what will always happen. This assumption kills initiative. It discourages experimentation. It convinces people that effort is risky and hope is naive. In a culture that rewards movement, this stillness becomes costly. Belief does not eliminate barriers, but it changes how people engage with them. Someone who believes in reinvention looks for alternative routes when the main road is blocked. They pivot instead of quitting. They adjust instead of retreating. This flexibility aligns with the American economic and cultural landscape, where linear paths are becoming less common and adaptability is increasingly valuable. Ultimately, America does not reward belief in a moral sense, it rewards the behaviors that belief produces. Initiative leads to exposure. Exposure leads to learning. Learning leads to leverage. Leverage creates opportunity. This chain rarely begins with money. It almost always begins with mindset. Refusing to see yourself as poor keeps you aligned with this reality. It keeps you willing to act before certainty, to learn before reward, and to reinvent before permission. In a country built on motion rather than inheritance, that willingness may be one of the most practical assets a person can have. Even when money is absent, value is not. This is one of the most misunderstood truths in modern American life. People are taught subtly and repeatedly that money is the primary measure of worth. So when money is scarce, they assume value is scarce too. But in reality, some of the most valuable forms of capital a person can possess are not stored in a bank account. They are carried internally through skills, mindset, discipline, adaptability, and work ethic. These are assets whether society labels them that way or not. In the United States, the economy does not run solely on money, it runs on value creation. Businesses grow because problems are solved. Careers advance because someone brings skill, reliability, or insight that others need. Opportunities appear when value is recognized. Money is often the result, not the starting point. Yet, when people see themselves as poor, they overlook the assets they already carry. They assume they have nothing to offer, when in fact they may have more leverage than they realize. Skills are one of the most powerful forms of currency in America. They can be learned, refined, transferred, and monetized in countless ways. The modern economy rewards people who can communicate, analyze, create, organize, build, teach, code, repair, design, manage, or solve problems. Many of these skills are not dependent on formal degrees or large investments, but a poverty mindset convinces people that skill building is pointless if money is tight. It frames learning as a luxury rather than a strategy. Work ethic is another undervalued asset. Showing up consistently, taking responsibility, and following through may sound basic, but they are increasingly rare. In many workplaces and industries, reliability alone can set someone apart. Employers notice the person who takes initiative, who learns quickly, who doesn't disappear when things get hard. These qualities create trust, and trust often leads to opportunity. But when someone believes they are poor, they may unconsciously downplay these strengths, assuming they don't count without credentials or cash. Discipline functions like invisible capital. The ability to delay gratification, stay focused, and follow routines creates momentum over time. In the US, where distractions are constant and quick rewards are everywhere, discipline compounds faster than most people expect. Someone with little money but strong discipline can steadily build skills, networks, and experience. Someone with money but no discipline often loses ground just as quickly. Yet discipline rarely feels valuable to someone who equates worth with income. Adaptability is another critical asset in the American landscape. Industries shift, technology evolves, and job security is no longer guaranteed in the way it once was. People who can learn new tools, pivot directions, and adjust strategies are far more resilient than those who cling to a single identity. This flexibility is a form of wealth, even if it doesn't show up on a balance sheet. But a poverty mindset resists change. It tells people to hold on tightly to what little they have, even if it no longer serves them. The ability to learn may be the most underestimated currency of all. In a country with unprecedented access to information, education is no longer confined to classrooms. Skills can be learned online through experience, through mentorship, or through self-directed effort. But learning requires belief in a future payoff. Someone who sees themselves as poor often struggles to invest energy in learning because they don't trust the future to reward it. They focus on immediate survival instead of long-term leverage. Confidence, when grounded in effort rather than ego, also functions as currency. People respond to those who believe in their own capacity to contribute. This is especially true in the US, where self-presentation often influences opportunity. Confidence affects how people speak in interviews, how they negotiate pay, how they share ideas, and how they pursue growth. A poverty identity erodes this confidence, making people smaller in rooms where they should be expanding. Another overlooked asset is perspective. Struggle teaches problem solving, empathy, and resilience. People who have faced hardship often develop sharper instincts, stronger emotional intelligence, and a deeper understanding of effort. These qualities are valuable in leadership, collaboration, and entrepreneurship. Yet, when people label themselves as poor, they reinterpret their experiences as evidence of inadequacy instead of training. They miss the strength forged through difficulty. In America, many opportunities are informal before they become formal. They start as conversations, side projects, referrals, or trial chances. People are often invited into these spaces because someone saw potential, not because they saw wealth. But potential must be visible. When someone believes they have nothing of value, they don't present themselves as contributors. They wait to be chosen instead of stepping forward. This invisibility can be more limiting than lack of money itself. Seeing your skills and mindset as currency also changes how you approach time. Instead of measuring success only by immediate income, you begin to see effort as investment. You understand that some seasons are for building, not earning. This perspective is crucial in the US, where many successful paths involve delayed payoff, education, training, startups, creative work, or career pivots. Without this mindset, patience feels foolish. With it, patience feels strategic. The danger of equating value solely with money is that it creates passivity. People wait for external validation before believing in themselves. They assume once they have money, they'll deserve confidence, respect, or ambition. But in reality, those qualities often need to come first. Money tends to follow people who already see themselves as capable, not those waiting for proof. Recognizing your internal assets does not mean ignoring financial reality. Bills still matter. Income still matters. But it means refusing to see money as the only measure of worth or progress. It means understanding that you are not starting from zero, even if your bank account says otherwise. You are starting with tools, some visible, some not, that can be sharpened and leveraged. In the American context, where systems are competitive and outcomes uncertain, this recognition becomes a form of protection. It prevents discouragement from turning into resignation. It keeps effort alive when rewards are delayed. It allows people to show up as contributors rather than dependents on circumstance. When someone truly understands that their mindset, skills, and work ethic are currency, they stop waiting to feel ready. They begin where they are. They learn, adapt, and improve. They look for ways to create value instead of reasons they can't. Over time, this orientation compounds, opportunities respond to it, growth follows it. Money is one form of currency, but it is not the only one, and it is rarely the first one that matters. In a society built on contribution, those who recognize and develop their internal assets often find that financial capital eventually catches up. Even when money is gone, value is not. This is one of the most overlooked truths in modern American life. People are taught, directly and indirectly, that money is the primary proof of worth. When money disappears, confidence often follows it out the door. But this confusion between money and value is what traps people far longer than financial hardship ever could. Money is a tool. Value is a capacity. And capacity does not vanish just because the account balance does. In the United States, the economy quietly runs on skills, adaptability, and problem solving far more than on cash alone. Industries change fast. Technology evolves. Job titles that didn't exist 5 years ago now support entire careers. In this environment, the most valuable asset a person can possess is not savings, but the ability to learn, adjust, and execute. Yet, when someone sees themselves as poor, they overlook these assets because they don't look like money, at least not yet. Work ethic, discipline, curiosity, communication skills, emotional intelligence, resilience, these are forms of currency. They don't show up on bank statements, but they shape outcomes just as powerfully. Employers, clients, and collaborators respond to people who solve problems, show consistency, and take ownership. These qualities create trust, and trust often leads to opportunity long before money enters the picture. A poverty mindset causes people to underestimate what they already carry. They wait to feel ready or established before they take themselves seriously. They assume they need capital before they can create value. But in reality, value is what attracts capital. People who recognize their own capacity are more likely to invest time in developing skills, improving performance, and positioning themselves strategically. Over time, this compounds. In America, many doors open not because someone had money, but because they were useful, reliable, and willing to grow. Someone who shows up consistently, learns quickly, and adapts under pressure becomes valuable regardless of their starting point. But this only happens when a person believes they have something to offer. Seeing yourself as poor blocks that belief. Seeing yourself as capable, even while struggling, activates it. Protecting your sense of value during hard times is not ego, it is accuracy. Money may be missing, but effort, intelligence, and potential are still present. And in a system that rewards contribution, those qualities remain negotiable assets. When you stop measuring yourself solely by money, you begin to see leverage where you once saw lack. That shift doesn't guarantee success, but without it, success becomes almost impossible. Keynote No. 5. How you see yourself determines how you decide, and decisions quietly shape outcomes over time. Self-image acts like an internal compass, guiding choices even when you're not aware of it. When someone sees themselves as poor, limited, or behind, their decisions naturally reflect caution, fear, and self-protection. When someone sees themselves as capable and becoming, their decisions reflect movement, growth, and long-term thinking. The difference is subtle, but the consequences are enormous. In the US, where many opportunities are not handed out but pursued, self-image often matters more than raw talent. People apply for jobs they believe they qualify for. They negotiate when they believe they deserve more. They speak up when they believe their voice matters. A poverty mindset quietly removes people from these moments, not because they lack ability, but because they don't expect a positive outcome. Fear-based decision making often feels responsible. Playing it safe sounds wise when money is tight. But over time, excessive caution becomes a form of stagnation. People stay in situations that drain them because change feels risky. They delay learning new skills because effort without immediate payoff feels dangerous. They avoid environments where growth happens because they fear being exposed. These decisions feel logical in the moment, but they slowly shrink possibility. In contrast, a healthy self-image allows for calculated risk. It doesn't deny reality, but it doesn't let fear dominate it either. People who believe they are growing make different choices with the same information. They might take a lower paying role that offers learning. They might invest time into a skill before it pays off. They might accept temporary discomfort in exchange for long-term leverage. These decisions rarely feel comfortable, but they move life forward. American culture often rewards people who act before certainty. Many careers are built not through perfect planning, but through momentum, trying, adjusting, learning, and trying again. Self-image determines whether someone participates in that process or watches it from the sidelines. When you see yourself as poor, failure feels like confirmation. When you see yourself as becoming, failure feels like feedback. Another effect of self-image is how people respond to setbacks. Those who identify with limitation take rejection personally. They see obstacles as proof that they don't belong. Those with a stronger self-image see obstacles as part of the process. They recover faster, adjust strategies, and continue. Over time, resilience becomes a competitive advantage. Confidence also influences how others respond to you. In American professional and social spaces, people often mirror the energy you bring. When you carry yourself as someone with direction, even without resources, others are more likely to invest time, trust, and opportunity. This is not about pretending. It is about refusing to shrink internally because of external pressure. Ultimately, outcomes are rarely the result of one big decision. They are the result of thousands of small ones made consistently. Self-image determines the quality of those decisions. Protecting how you see yourself during hard times protects your future options. When you refuse to see yourself as poor, you keep choosing growth over fear, movement over stagnation, and possibility over resignation. Over time, those choices build a life that circumstances alone never could. Too many people believe the story that money must come first and then confidence will follow. They think that having a full bank account, the right connections, or the perfect circumstances is what will allow them to feel capable, secure, or worthy. But in reality, waiting for resources to feel confident is a trap that keeps countless people stuck in survival mode, constantly chasing conditions that may never align perfectly. In the United States, a country built on innovation, entrepreneurship, and self reliance, history proves a simple truth: confidence without money almost always precedes financial breakthrough. Consider the countless entrepreneurs, inventors, and creators who started with nothing. They had empty wallets, but full belief in their ability to figure it out. That belief gave them the courage to pitch ideas, take risks, and persevere when failure was inevitable. Confidence was the fuel, resources followed. Confidence changes how people show up. It influences the tone of your voice, the posture you carry, and the energy you project. Investors, employers, clients, and collaborators respond first to energy, presence, and conviction. Money may eventually catch up, but without confidence, the opportunity often never arrives. Acting confident opens doors that perfect resources alone cannot. In America, people who act as if they belong, even before they fully do, gain access to opportunities. They raise their hand for projects, speak up in meetings, ask questions, and make themselves visible. All of these actions carry a subtle assumption: I am capable. I can handle this. That assumption alone often creates leverage. It signals readiness even if the material conditions are incomplete. Confidence also shapes decision making. When people are overly focused on the lack of resources, every choice becomes survival driven. They prioritize comfort over progress and avoidance over action. But when confidence comes first, decision making shifts. Risk becomes calculated, not paralyzing. Challenges are seen as temporary tests rather than permanent obstacles. Effort becomes strategic instead of reactive. Another crucial factor is resilience. The United States has always celebrated the idea of getting back up after failure. But resilience cannot exist without belief in one's own capacity. Confidence without money allows individuals to view setbacks as lessons instead of proof of inadequacy. It prevents temporary loss from becoming internalized as permanent identity. Furthermore, confidence allows for creativity. In a society where innovation is often rewarded, people who believe in themselves can find solutions with limited resources. They leverage what they have, improvise, and stretch their capabilities. Waiting for perfect conditions limits ingenuity, while confidence without money forces problem solving, adaptability, and resourcefulness, all highly valued traits in American professional and entrepreneurial culture. Ultimately, confidence is the precursor to opportunity. Money amplifies confidence, but it rarely creates it from scratch. The key lesson is simple: believe in your ability to grow, learn, and overcome first. Position yourself mentally as capable, and the world, your network, opportunities, and financial resources will begin to respond. In America, the country of reinvention and second chances, this principle is especially powerful. Confidence must come before resources. Those who internalize it often find that the very opportunities they waited for emerge only after they act as if they already have them. No matter how difficult things feel right now, this phase does not define your future. Life is not a single snapshot, it is a series of chapters, and every chapter has the power to change. Many people make the mistake of assuming that their current circumstances are permanent, that the struggles they face today will become the narrative of their entire life. But the truth, especially in America, is that circumstances are temporary while mindset determines the long-term trajectory. What happens now is not who you are, it is simply where you are. The danger of letting a challenging period define you is that it limits both thinking and action. People who accept hardship as identity begin to make decisions from fear instead of vision. They settle for less than they are capable of achieving. They hesitate to take risks. They avoid opportunities because they believe their current situation is a reflection of innate limitations. This is how temporary difficulty transforms into permanent stagnation, but it doesn't have to. History in the United States provides countless examples of people who rose from nothing to extraordinary success. Immigrants arrived with empty pockets but full determination. Entrepreneurs failed repeatedly yet kept innovating. Artists, athletes, and thinkers often struggled for years before achieving recognition. What all of these people share is one crucial mindset. They refuse to let the present define them. They saw their challenges as temporary tests, not permanent labels. Viewing hardship as a phase rather than a defining factor allows people to preserve hope, ambition, and self-respect. When someone experiences difficulty and acknowledges that it is temporary, they remain engaged with possibilities rather than being paralyzed by fear. They continue learning, improving, and positioning themselves for the moment opportunity arises. In contrast, when hardship is internalized as identity, hope shrinks and potential is quietly surrendered. This distinction also changes behavior in tangible ways. When someone believes that this moment is temporary, they are more likely to take calculated risks, to step into unfamiliar spaces, and to engage with challenges. They apply for jobs even when they don't meet every requirement. They pitch ideas even when resources are limited. They network, learn, and adapt. The American landscape often rewards action taken before perfection, and those who see hardship as temporary are precisely the ones willing to act. Another important factor is resilience. America has long celebrated the ability to get back up after failure. Resilience is not simply enduring hardship, it is the understanding that recovery, growth, and reinvention are possible. When you define yourself by a temporary struggle, resilience becomes natural. You accept setbacks as lessons, not as evidence of inadequacy. You know that this chapter does not close the book, it simply contributes to the story. Moreover, seeing a phase as temporary protects your mental health and emotional energy. Shame, self-blame, and despair are often fueled by the false belief that hardship equals permanent failure. By separating circumstances from identity, people maintain dignity and self-worth even during challenging times. They understand that having nothing today does not mean they will have nothing tomorrow, and this perspective fosters courage and creativity. In America, opportunities are often uneven, and success is rarely linear. There will be setbacks, detours, and unpredictable obstacles. But viewing life as a series of phases allows individuals to remain adaptable. It encourages learning from mistakes, experimenting with new strategies, and persisting through discomfort. Each temporary challenge becomes a stepping stone rather than a chain that holds you back. The key is internal belief. External circumstances are outside your control, but how you interpret them is within your control. When you refuse to let the current phase define you, you regain agency. You stop waiting for perfect conditions to act. You start creating momentum with what you have, your skills, your mindset, and your willingness to keep moving forward. Momentum, in turn, attracts opportunities and resources that might have seemed impossible while you were stuck in a fixed identity. Finally, separating your present from your future aligns with the American ideal of reinvention. The country is built on the belief that people can rise, change, and redefine themselves at any point. This is not just inspirational rhetoric, it is practical reality. Your current hardship is a test, a lesson, or a season, but it is not your definition. How you respond, how you preserve your self image, and how you act today will shape the chapters yet to come. In short, no matter how tight, how uncertain, or how discouraging this phase feels, it does not define your future. Struggle is temporary, your potential is permanent. America rewards those who act as if the story is still being written. By refusing to let a temporary hardship dictate identity, you maintain vision, ambition, and confidence, the very things that allow you to rise. This perspective turns obstacles into opportunities, setbacks into preparation, and temporary conditions into the launching pad for lasting success.